Hello YouTube friends, Ben Ochart here, and today I'm going to start a series of videos called Every, and from time to time I get questions about my tanks and what kind of filter do you have in that tank, what's that substrate, things of that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and break it down tank by tank, and today we're going to start with tanks and filtration. And so we'll go through each of the tanks and their filtration, and then down the road we'll get into other things like the fish in every tank and other aspects of each tank. But let's start with tanks and filtration, and let's start with the tank that's right behind me, the 150. This is a 150 acrylic, sometimes called a peninsula tank, because it's designed to sit in a space where you actually can view it through both sides. Of course, I'm not using it that way, and the reason they refer to it as a tank like that is because the overflow is on this side here, and that's where water gets taken into the sump. And of course, that's just a black chamber that runs down the side here. So the overflow box would allow you to set this tank up in a way so you could actually view it in a center section. You could view it through both the back and the front. Of course, I'm not using it that way. I have a Universal Rocks rocky thin background on the back of this tank. All the rocks that you see in the tank, those are all also Universal Rocks, synthetic rocks. I like them because they're fairly realistic, and they're also very light, so you don't have to worry about dropping a very large rock into the tank. These small grassy-like things here are also from Universal, but the larger plants, like this leafy plant here, is from Elite Cichlids. And so are the plants that are on the on this side here. Those are all from Jack and Mike and their family over at Elite Cichlids, where they custom make plants for tanks. What's filtering this tank is, of course, a very large sump system that I'll show you. Here we have the first section that that overflow box goes into, and it's full of media. And you can see the hose that comes from the overflow. Just works its way through some Matin filters, some Swiss tropical filters, and through some of that Japanese media I talked about in a prior video. Some bio balls that are full of sponge, and some biohome at the bottom. The water travels out the bottom of that chamber and then goes through this thick Matin sponge that's standing right there. Maybe you can see it better if I have a light on this side. So it's a thick sponge. The water has to travel through that. That's also a home for beneficial bacteria. And the very back there's an algae scrubber that is producing algae. That's from my friends over at Santa Monica Filtration. So those are the first two chambers of the sump, and on top of the sump I have the pump that is running air through the algae scrubber. And there's a rock I'm not using right there. And the final chamber is the pump, and what I have in here currently is a Rio. This is a Rio high flow. I think it's about 2,000, maybe, I don't know, it's over 1,000 gallons per hour. Very quiet. I put it on these special feet that I picked up from Rio that have rubberized suction cup bottoms, and it makes the pump very, very quiet. You'll also notice in here two heaters that are currently unplugged, because in the summer the room stays pretty comfortable without heaters. So both those heaters are unplugged, and they're probably going to be replaced by a thin cobalt heater in the future. So these are just a little bit too big for this sump. Two of them in there. Those are Eheim. Those are German-made Eheim heaters. If you ever buy Jaeger Eheim, be sure they're German-made. And also in the back here, you'll notice there's a cube, a very large block of Brightwell NO3 media that is supposed to be doped with some type of a sulfur product that helps to consume nitrates. That's the sump filtration. And then I also have, as you can see over here in this section, a Sunsun 704B. And that 704B is exclusively mechanical filtration. It is full of sponges. That's all it has, just sponges. I'll clean that thing out maybe every 4 to 5 months. Never gives me a problem. I run the UV light on it on weekends. I don't run it non-stop. Otherwise, I don't want to damage the plastic inside the filter. I've heard reports of it. That's not happened to me, but I have had reports of that, heard reports of that happening. The lights on the 150 are a full spectrum 72-inch Beamswork LED system. 72-inch Beamswork LED. And the substrate in this tank is a crushed coral. The reason I use crushed coral is because it helps to add minerals such as calcium and magnesium, and that of course gives you a bit of a harder water, and that water then is more stable in its pH, and of course a higher pH, and of course minerals do help to neutralize nitrates to some degree. So these fish require a high pH. They also like being in a hard water, and thus that's why you see crushed coral down here. Mostly shells, pieces of coral, which mineralize the water quite a bit. On the side of the 150, I have a high door. That's a third generation power head. And what that does, it helps to sweep some of the detritus across the tank and into the filter intakes, which are on the other side of the tank. And that's pretty much the 150. Here in the 100, you'll notice I have also some plants. These larger plants on top here are from Elite Cichlids. The smaller plants are just Chinese plastic plants from eBay. This tank also has an algae scrubber that you see there in the back. Produces a lot of algae, which is reducing nitrates and adding oxygen. Before I service it, I open it up and I let the plecos and the other fish, like the clown loaches, eat that algae. They love it. There's a type of stone in here called a zebra stone. That's these black and white stones on the bottom here. I picked them out to match with the black sand. This sand is from a company called Imaginarium, and it's just basic black sand. There's also one other plant on the other side, also from my friends at Elite Cichlids, perhaps my favorite plant from them. .100 is filtered by a Fluval FX6. I have Fluval rings in it. I also have a bag of pumice, which is like lava rock. And I also have a bag of crushed coral to help add minerals to the water, since I don't have a substrate that adds minerals. And the FX6 has a pre-filter on the intake, which you've seen in my prior videos. But this is the only filter I have on this tank. You can make out the pre-filter against the back of the tank there, covering up the intake hose from the fluval. There's also a small power head in here. You can see it near the top, which is just helping to create a little bit of water circulation and some surface tension breakup. And that's pretty much the 100-gallon. In the 60 gallons, sometimes called the Juvie Hap Nation, I also have a crushed coral substrate, helping to add minerals to the water, helping with the water hardness and higher pH. And I also have some artificial rock there in the back. It's a little cave that the synodontists can use sometimes. There's also this dragon stone, this red striped stone. Somebody called it ham stone. So it looks like sliced ham. And there's also some lava rock, some very particular pieces of lava rock which I selected because normally lava rock is a little bit too sharp. It has edges that are too sharp that can sometimes scratch the eyes or body of the cichlids when they're chasing each other. So I tend to avoid it, but this lava rock was smooth enough for my taste. And there are a couple live plants in here, some anubias that were left over from my cichlid plant experiment, where I made the conclusion that plants don't mix with cichlids. And this tank is being heated by a cobalt heater. You can see it there in the back, very flat. It's just a great heater. And doesn't take up hardly any room, works perfectly. I'm probably going to add one of those to the sump and get rid of the two large Eheim Jaegers in there. These intakes, you'll notice, the intakes in this tank, if you can make it the black against the black there, but the two Sun 302Bs that are on this tank have their intakes covered with sponges. Not sure if you can really make them out. And this tank has, like the other tanks, an LED, a Beamswork full spectrum LED. And there's also another filter up here, a hang on back. There's a Marineland Emperor 400 dual bio wheel, hang on back filter. Moves a lot of water and really helps to polish the water. Got some pinky floss in there, a little bit of biological media. And underneath the tank, I have two Sun 302Bs. These are older Sun models, not even sure if they make them anymore. But I have two of them, which together with the hang-on back filter do a great job on this tank. These Sun have been running for about over 4 years, 24/7, and I bet you can't even hear them. They're just very, very quiet. They've done a great job. They have sponges, they have BioHome Ultimate in them, they have a little bit of Marine Pure, and 3 types of sponge, your coarse, medium, and fine sponges in the bottom tray. So that's the 60. The component parts of the 60. I don't think I missed anything, hopefully. So that wraps up the breakdown on the tanks. I hope you found that informative. I hope that answered your questions. If you think of any other questions about the tanks, just go ahead and ask them below. Go ahead and post them, and I'll try my best to handle or my best to answer those. those questions, and of course I have other folks here in the Convo gang who might also answer your questions. So that's it on my tanks for now, and stay tuned for the upcoming videos, which will include every fish. That'll be the next series. We went through every tank. We'll go through every fish. Thank you so much for tuning in.